Hello guys, welcome back. In this today's video, we will dig into the IAM service which is provided by the AWS. So, what does mean by IAM, right? So, IAM is nothing but identity and access management. So, let's talk about um, commonly used identities with the IAM. So, have you heard about as a DevOps engineer or any cloud engineer, you will see somebody will ask you to add a user. So now at that time we shouldn't have the answer is I don't know, right? So user is nothing but it's an entity where we need to give the permission of the services. That's it. So there are some common entities used with the IAM. First is the user, then we have the groups, the third one is the role, the fourth one is the policy. We will look into the step by step. First we'll try with the user, correct? So user can be anything. Let's say your organization is following the Gmail or Outlook or any of the identity provider, right? So in some of the cases it will be google.com, gmail.com, right? So what we can do, you can assign or add the user from the IAM by use of the email address. Then second one is the username. It's not necessary to add the email as a user. You can add the username as well. So let's say you don't have any identity provider, then you can use a simple username. So in this scenario, I'm using the Cloud Premi, correct? So by this use case, we can give the access of this particular users to our AWS console. Now, what are the access can be given, correct? So let's say one of my user came and he wants to see the logs, and our application has logs in CloudWatch logs. So what I will do, I'll create the user and I will take the necessary actions. Correct. Let us talk about the groups. For groups, we'll take a simple example. So the groups are nothing but it's a group of IAM user where user can be attached to multiple groups. Correct. Then the second one is the users can have the policies attached and the groups will be useful to restrict the access. We'll see step by step. Just to give the heads up about here, let's say somebody came to you and he gives you 1000 users list, and 1000 users are too much, right? And he asks you to and he has also provided one policy to you which you will be attached to this 1000 users. So but as a person you will have to think about it, because uh, adding the policy to the 1000 users, it's not a joke, right? It will take a lot of time, it will take a lot of efforts, correct? So what we can do is that we can simply create a group of 1000 users. Okay, so I'm creating the group of 1000 users. Let's say I have created a group as a read user list. Okay, and I have added this 1000 users to this group. Now instead of applying this policy to each of the user, what I will do, I will apply directly this policy to the group. Sorted, correct? So in this scenario the groups can be helpful. Another one example, let's take an example of you have uh, multiple teams in your organization. Okay, now you want to give access restrictions to the specific team. Now let's say you have dev team, then you have test team, then you'll have the admin. So what I can do, I know what are the services will be utilized by the developers. Okay, then there are some services which are useful for the developers, not useful for the testers. Okay, so what I will do, I will create a develop group and assign the permission or policies. Then I will create a group of testers and add the users and assign the policies. Okay, by segregating this, what we will achieve is that least privilege access. Yeah, this is also the example of groups. Now let's talk about the role. Okay, so the role is nothing but it's an entity which is useful to access the services. Just to give the heads up about the role is that you can create a role to access the services within an account, or if somebody from your other organization or other member wants to access some specified services in your AWS account. In that scenario, the role will be a vital plays a vital role. Role is playing the vital role. Correct. So it in this scenario, role will be useful where you want to give the access inside your AWS account, and if you want to give the access of services to the external users. Okay, we'll see a step by step by practically. Then we have the policies. Policy is nothing but a set of permission which we will apply to the specific user, specific groups. So here is a twisting is that policies can be attached to the group, and the policies can be attached to the specific user. Now let's talk about the policies. There are multiple policies which provided by the AWS, which we call as the default policies, which I already showed you, right? uh, in the global roles, sorry, there are some policies which has created by AWS. Look at this. So the type of the policy is AWS managed. And okay, we'll see step by step. Then we have the inline policy, which is actually you can create one policy for the group and attach that policy to the group or user. Then we have the custom policies. Let's say you want to have a set of a single policy which will have the multiple services. That thing also it is possible via using IAM policies. Now let's go about the practical things. Correct. So once I log in into the AWS console, my dashboard will look like that. You can see there are some security recommendation provided by AWS, and we already in the last video we already added this root user MFA. So we have added the MFA to the root user. If you haven't checked out that video, you can check it in. I'll provide the link in the description or at the end of the video. Okay, let us talk about the access management. Inside the access management, there are the user group, as I already mentioned, correct? A user group is a collection of IAM users. Then we have the users. Then we have the roles, which is a IAM role is an identity you can create has a specific permission that we already talked about. Then we have the policies. Now I was talking about the creation of user. Okay, so user can be having the name. Let's say I use this ABC. Okay, or the email address, whatever you want to specify as a user, you can specify as a user. Then we have the groups. Let's create first. We'll create a group. As I already mentioned, let's create a developer group. I don't have any user of as of now. So let's say I want to give the developer access of S3 full access. Okay, and it's a AWS managed policy. Now what I can do, I'll go and I have created one user group where the group name is developer, and all of the developers in our organization wants to access this S3 bucket. I have given the full access, but it's not recommended to give the full access. It depends upon the use case. Okay, now let's take a user as dev. Let's create a user. To create a user, you just simply click on the create user dev. Now if you want this user to be accessible or to log in with the AWS management console, you can click on the provide user access to AWS management console. Now there are he's asking about providing console access. Now I'll choose I want to create an IAM user, and I'll use the auto generated password, and I'll also ask them to users must sign in, must create a new password at the next sign in. It's a recommended and you can use it. The next, now here there are three things. Okay, now as I already mentioned, we can attach the permission to the user. The first one by adding user to the group, second one is copying the permission, then third is attaching the policy directly. Now let's go with the add user to the group. Now I want to add the particular user to this developer group. I'll click on the next. I'll add the tag whatever you want to specify. Then you'll see there is a console login URL and username and password. I'll share this username password with that user, and that's it. The user has been created. And if you check, the user has a group, correct? So here is the IAM user change password. It got automatically added when we have chosen the user must create the new password at the first time login. Okay, then we have the group. So inside the group, if you check this dev user got added to the developer group, right? So this is all about the user groups and users. Now let's talk about the roles. Now let's say my application is deployed on the EC2 instance or any of the compute services which is provided by the AWS. It can be a Lambda, ECS, Fargate, ECS, EC2, anything. Now what I want my application to access the secret manager. Okay, so what I will do, I'll create a first I will create a role which which is to be used by which service. Let's say EC2, Lambda, Gateway, all of these things. These services can use this role and access the services. Let's choose about the EC2 instance. Now my use case is EC2 instance, and there are also multiple services or use cases provided. EC2 role for AWS system management. Look at this. Allow EC2 instances to call AWS services like CloudWatch and System Manager. I'll choose as of now EC2. Next, and here while creating the role, you can attach the permissions. I'll add the secret manager. Now my application, if my application wants to get access of secret manager, or just to give the best example is that S3. Okay, I just want my application to get access to S3 bucket. I'm just attaching for the read-only access. Click on the next. I'll give the role name as a EC2 role for S3. Allow EC2 instance to call S3 services. You can mention or create a role. So as soon as this role has been created, now let's say you deployed an application inside the EC2 instance, and that EC2 instance wants to access the S3 bucket. Here, instead of configuring the access key, secret key, you can directly attach this IAM role to the EC2 instance. We will have this separate session on that, how we can attach or create a EC2 instance later on. As of now, we just focus on the entities that or the roles and user groups, correct? So this is all about the roles. Now, as I already mentioned about the policies, so there are multiple policies. Policies are nothing but a permissions uh, which will be acting as a guard for the users. So the policy is an object in AWS that defines the permission. Now let's create a new policy. There is an option of visual and JSON. So let me go as of now with the visual one. So let's say I want S3 service and what actions I want to do. Previously, you have seen, right? We have the S3 full access, read only access. But let's say I want the write access. What I will do, I will click on the write. I just as of now I just chosen the all write actions, but you can choose the least privilege access and then click on next. Specify resources for the selected actions. Okay, now it will ask you about the resources. So the resources are nothing but, let's say you want to give this access to specific resource. Resource is nothing but a S3 bucket. Let's say you created first S3 bucket and you want to give this write access to the particular S3 bucket. Then it will act as a specific. Now, as of now, I'll choose the resources as all. Click on the next S3 write policy. Now this permission has been defined. Review and click on create policies. Now here what we can do now, let's say the dev user has a full access, but organization has decided that these users should not have the full access of any of the services. So now we had created the group of the developer users, so it is very easy for any person to just attach the new policy to the users. Okay, by attaching to the groups, it will directly attach to the users. But if let's say I would have attached this policy directly to users, but in that scenario I had to go to the each of the users. I had to check whether this permission got attached to any of the users, right? So it's better to create a user group and attach this policy to the user group. You got my point? Okay. Now in the permission policy, you can just, as of now I'm removing this. Now what I will do, I'll add the new policy which has been created by me. So S3 write policy. Now by use of this, what it will have, the dev user will not have the delete permission or say get permission. Okay, it will have only the write permission. Just giving the example. Now this is all about the policies. Then we have the identity providers. Identity providers mainly used when we have if we want to manage the users outside of the AWS. Okay, or you have this identity provided as Outlook or Microsoft, or and you want to manage this application by using this IDP. You can use this identity providers inside the access management. Okay, the next one is account settings. Now this account settings is nothing but where we can configure the password policies, where we have the security token services. The password policies is we can set any password policy. Let's say I want the custom policy and I want to enforce each of the users must have the 15-14 characters. Each of the users required the at least one uppercase. You can do whatever your mm, compliance policies is there. Okay, now this is about the account settings. Now there is another thing in the IAM is access analyzer. So access analyzer is nothing but it will simplify your journey. Let's say you have created multiple users and you want to uh, access the findings of external users, or modify, or you want to find the user access which is unused. So you can use of by use of the access analyzer, you can review the findings and take the access. Okay. Then we have the credential reports. As of now, I don't have any IAM users in this. So just created now, right? So it will create again a new report after 4 hours. So the new report will be created after 4 hours. So what it will do, it will download all of the IAM users and the status of their various credential, like when it was accessed, which service it has been accessed, and all of these things. Okay. Then we have the organizational activity and service control policy. This can be useful when we have our application, or AWS account is the member of the organization. So as of now, it's a standalone the account. So I don't have any organization as of now. So I can't use it. But the service control policies are nothing but it's a organization level policies where we can control the things. Okay. So this is all about the user groups, users, so access management and access reports. Okay. Now let's check about the best practices which currently organizations are being followed. Okay, the first policy the organization is following is that least privilege access. What does it mean by least privilege access? I will give one example. Let's say, as we already have shown the demo of creating the users. Okay, now I have the two users. One user is having all of the access, and the second user is having a limited access. But unfortunately, what has happened? The first user access, or the access key, secret key, or the credentials got stolen by hackers, and it got hacked. So my entire system will be in their hand. You're you're getting it, okay? So to avoid this, the organizations are following the least privileged access. So whoever is having this access, he shouldn't have the full access. That's the main motto of the least privileged access. We will grant the limited minimal access required for a job functions. So this is about the least privilege access. Then we have the multi-factor authentication. I think we already covered up this part in the last video, but I'll just show or say about this multi-factor is nothing but it will have the password you know and the security device you own. That's it. Then we have the organizations are following the role-based access control. Now here we shouldn't, or we should never use the access key and secret key of that user. Okay. Even if we want to try multiple things, you can use the online. You shouldn't use the access key and secret key, and we should have the role-based access control. So instead of the access key and secret key, we should have the role-based access control. Does it with the mean that by use of the roles and permission, will manage the uh, services access. Then organization also following the regular access reviews by use of the credential reports. They will download the credential reports, and you'll see this user has been logged in multiple times. Okay, and he is accessing multiple services. Then by use of the IAM, we can have the logging and monitoring as well. So we multiple multiple organizations are following implementing this monitoring to track the user activity. Now let's summarize about what we have learned so far. Okay, So talking about the identity and access management, you got a pretty idea now about what is this service means and what is their use case. Okay, so just to summarize it, we use this IAM service to create a user, add users to group, add the permission policies, creation of the roles. Okay, and blah blah blah. And we also have talked about the best practices. So what are the best practices we should follow and the organization is following to accommodate this IAM services. Yeah, so this is all about the IAM, guys. I'll see on the next video with a different topic. Thank you.